that is an absolutely impossible standard because it neglects the fact that we're all unique. We are supposed to be different. And so we end up viewing each other as threats. Hi everyone, welcome to the Lead from Love podcast. I am Yalini, I am your host and love coach. All right, today's episode, we are going to do a deep dive into a story that you have been sold by multi-billion-dollar industries, which impact your self-confidence and your worth. And not only that, it affects the relationships that you have, especially with other women. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because I did something a few weeks ago that shocked a few people because it went against this story. So I'm going to share what I did in today's episode and why I did it. Because you know what? When you connect the dots, it exposes an underlying culture of comparison that has us competing against one another in a way that is really unhealthy, where it leaves you feeling alone and exhausted. So I'm going to share how it's so insidious in Western societies that it impacts your ability to feel loved, to feel accepted. And then to help you flip the script and take your power back, I'm going to share what you can do to free yourself from this old script of competition and move into a space of unity, of collaboration, so you can build an elevated community around you to finally feel loved and accepted, so you can just feel celebrated and whole. All right, so to start off with, what did I do that shocked people? So it's to do with an ex and his new girlfriend. And before I go into the specifics of what happened, let me just give you a little bit of context so that it makes sense. So this is an ex where, we broke up about half a decade ago now. So it's really going back a while. And the reason he's even coming up in this conversation is because we share a dog called Ollie together. So, we have this co-parenting arrangement, which I know surprises some people, but you know what? We had a really loving and respectful relationship, and I'm just really fortunate that we both stayed loving and respectful in the breakup. So you know what? Instead of making someone give up Ollie, we wanted to be considerate. We wanted to try and see if we could even create a co-parenting space, and we managed to make it work. And, it's great because now it's like having a permanent dog sitter. So you never have to worry about going away or being really busy that week because you know that someone is there and available to look after him. Now, it's not like, him and I are close friends. We don't really catch up or hang out. I know that some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. For me personally, it's not something that interests me. I believe in leaving the past in the past, and you can cherish those good moments and the learnings and lessons you gained from that, and then you move forward. So the connection is really to the extent of, has he been fed? Has he been walked? Is there anything I need to know? Like, it's really that level of connection and dog logistics. So that's basically the extent of that connection. And it means that occasionally I see his girlfriend because they live together, and sometimes she's there when I pick Ollie up. And, she's got her own dog, which is really sweet because when Ollie's there, it's like he's got a brother. So that leads me to what happened. So at the moment, Ollie's dad is away on holidays, which is, fantastic for me because I get to have Ollie full time. And what happened is that when I went to pick Ollie up from his girlfriend, she had mentioned that her dog was going to be home alone someday that week. And she was just worried about him because he's got anxiety, and now it means Ollie wasn't going to be there. And so, a couple of days later, I was like, well, I'm going to be home. I'm available. There's really no need for her dog to stay home and be anxious on his own. So I messaged her and I said, if you're stuck and you're worried about him, then you're welcome to drop him off at mine. I'm happy to look after him for the day. And, I want to mention as well that she's also offered to take care of Ollie during this period if ever I'm busy and I'm unavailable. So that generosity of spirit is already there. So from that perspective, I don't think it's all that surprising. But from the outside looking in, here's what most people see. Because, If you look after a friend's dog, that's normal. That's a nice thing to do. If you look after your ex's dog, that tends to raise a few eyebrows. And then if you're looking after your ex's girlfriend's dog, that tends to come across as being a little bit strange. And, on the surface of it, yeah, I get it. It is a peculiar thing to be doing, and it's not something I necessarily ever expected myself to do because, similarly, it's strange, or it's considered strange to be friends with the ex's new girlfriend. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's because it's not the norm. And it's not just that we're not expected to be friends, we're generally not even expected to get along or like each other. And here's why I'm bringing this up, because the issue goes a lot deeper. So we're going to do a deep dive into why we're not expected to get along, because the reason for that might surprise you. And, beyond healthy boundaries and moving on from the past, there's a deeper reason why something like this would generally be considered strange. And here's the kicker. You ready for it? They're thoughts and beliefs that don't even belong to you. It's a perception that you inherited basically from a society that has you competing against one another. And, at least when I speak about this, I'm talking predominantly in Western cultures. Because here's the thing. Babies don't come into this world not liking each other and turning against each other thinking, my skin color is better than your skin color, or having blonde hair is better than having brown hair. That's not the way it works. It's something they learn along the way. Because you know what? At least in the West, we live in a culture of comparison and competition, where it's almost this me versus you or me versus her mindset. There's this constant sense of rivalry because instead of accepting one another or helping and supporting each other, it's like we're constantly looking at, how do we measure up against one another? Am I as smart as her? Am I as successful or beautiful? Am I as desirable as her? Because if you don't feel like you measure up, then it's easy to feel threatened by someone else that does. Whether that's in work, whether that's in love, or even in your friendship circles. And it's not a nice thing to think of, but a lot of women look at their friends and they compete with one another. What does she have that I don't have? Am I better than her? Do I look better in this? And then if we bring it back to the relationship context, what's one of the first things that you want to know when you're dating someone? And I'm talking, beyond who he is or whether you want the same things and you get along, you have similar values. At some point, you generally want to know who came before. Or if you're the ex, there's a level of curiosity in knowing who came after. Because what you're really looking at is, what am I being measured up against? And as long as you feel better than the other person, you don't feel threatened. Your pride, your sense of self, that remains intact. Because in this culture, it's not enough to feel good in your own skin. It's not enough to be a good person, to be happy with who you are, to know that you have a lot to offer. It's like you have to feel like you are better than the ex. Because if you don't feel like an upgrade, then it's easy to feel threatened. It's easy to feel insecure because then you have all of these thoughts and worries swirling through your head. For example, it's, well, if it didn't work with her and she's better than me, then am I enough? Or I'm not like her, or I'm not as good as her. So what does he see in me? We start to question ourselves. We start to question our value and our worth. And these stories feed into that because of this culture where it's like we need to compete against one another. And I hate to admit it, but I've done it too. I've played that comparison game. I wanted to know who came after me or who the person before me was. Because just like you, I'm a product of the society I was raised in. And so it takes effort and work sometimes to actually pull myself back and ask myself questions like, why should it matter? Really? Because a relationship typically doesn't end because of someone else that came years later or before. And, at least for me, no one did anything wrong. No one was a bad person. It really just came down to whether or not we're even right for each other. So in that context, there's no point comparing myself to their before or after partners because it wouldn't have changed anything in the relationship. It had nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with me and the dynamics with that person in that relationship. And then, if you want to go further, what's even the point in comparing? Really, because we're not supposed to be the same. If one relationship didn't work out, why would you date someone else exactly the same? You'd just be recycling the same relationship, the same problems, the same experience. So naturally you want someone or something different. And yet somehow that's not enough to stop this comparison loop. If we generalize it further, just think about when you go out to a bar. Women are notorious for not just looking at the quality of the men in that space, but we check out other women. And we do it on some level because we're checking out the competition, which basically means what's the likelihood of someone wanting you over them, over that other woman? And, it's easy to think that this behavior is universal. We see it reinforced in the media through TV shows and through movies, that we think that's just what we all do. That's what it's like as a woman. But you know what? It's not. Not to the level that it exists, because it's not inherent in your biology to think or act like that. It's a learned behavior. And like I mentioned just before, where do you learn it from? It's the media. Because this competition feels a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you think about it, growing up, we're exposed to certain standards of beauty, especially as women. We're exposed to certain standards of consumerism and success that defines our worth, that defines our place in this life. For a woman, success used to be premised in the housewife role. Then there was the girl boss movement. It was about, the woman that has it all. And if you achieve this and you embody this, then you're successful, then you're worthy, then you're amazing, then you can be celebrated. And it doesn't end there in terms of the role that you play in life, but it also comes down to beauty. What's promoted through the media in this industry, it's not representative of the population. It's not about having different sizes and shapes of body and color. And it's a really narrow standard of beauty where you need to have a specific body type. What's typically celebrated is that you are tall and slim and fit. And then when it comes to skin tones, being a fairer complexion, but nicely tanned and clear skin. And then, it doesn't end there. Then it's about the specific facial features, like having a slender nose, having fuller lips, having big, round, perky butt. And to understand the impact of that, just consider how many people are contouring their noses these days to make it look slimmer. How many women are getting lip fillers? How commonplace is it now for women to have Botox? Some even to have butt implants to get that big booty. And if you're not going to the doctor's clinic, then you're hitting the gym hard to conform and mold every part of your body. Not always because you want to be fit, but because you want your body to look a certain way, a way that the media is celebrating as ideal. And, these beauty standards, which, by the way, isn't permanent. It's not forever because it's constantly changing. Look at women's eyebrows as an example. Something that you think would just be what you're born with. That has changed dramatically over the years. Do you remember when it used to be really thin and overly plucked? And then somewhere along the way, what was celebrated was those really full and heavy eyebrows, where a lot of women were getting them tattooed on as well to make them look thicker. And now eyebrows, it's about being light and fluffy, and you get the gel to stroke them upright so they're standing vertical, and you get lamination. There's always a new trend to consume and conform to. So you're constantly having to evolve and mold yourself to look beautiful or to be accepted. And then if you don't keep up, you're left behind. It's almost like you're not beautiful, or you're not successful, or you won't be accepted or loved, which means ultimately you get judged. Now, from my perspective, really the only times we need to judge is if you are in a court proceeding or in a competition, because that's when you're competing to win something, to win the case, to win a prize. But honestly, what's the point of judging or competing against one another in everyday life? I was speaking to a close friend of mine, and she was sharing that the worst culprits of this in her experience has been mothers. And she was reflecting, back when she had her first baby in mothers groups, and it's like, you can't win. If you dress well, then you get judged for being vain. And then if you don't dress well, you get judged for letting yourself go. And then if you're having trouble with the kids, you're a bad mum. And then if you have the dream child, oh, well, you're rubbing it in, or you're just so lucky. And then if your home's a mess, you're neglectful. If it's tidy, you must have gotten help. There's no way you could have done it on your own. It doesn't end. And that's awful. Because is that really the world that we want to live in? Is that really the belief and ideologies that we want to perpetuate? Because unless you have different people around you that reinforces a new idea, it can feel really hard to get out of that competitive me versus her judgy race. And so when you come from this culture and you hear that I looked after my ex's girlfriend's dog, the typical reaction would be to ask, why? Because there's an underlying belief that we shouldn't like each other, that somehow we should be rivals, that we should be competing and judging each other, not helping each other. Why would we ever want to do that? Right? But here's the thing. Constantly competing is exhausting. It creates the pressure to compare and conform and keep up appearances. It is a lot. We've got enough on our plates as it is. And then, beyond the exhaustion, it can also be really lonely. Because for as long as you are competing, you're stuck in a world of you versus me. And, often this stems from the belief that there's not enough to go around. That if she's beautiful and successful, then somehow that means that I can't be beautiful and successful because she took that place. She took the place that I wanted. Or if she's doing well and you're not, then somehow it means that her skills and her life is a reflection of something that's wrong or missing in you, that you couldn't achieve the same thing. You couldn't possibly, you're not her. And again, it's reinforced by a society that creates this perception that we should all look and act and achieve the same thing. And that is an absolutely impossible standard because it neglects the fact that we're all unique. We are supposed to be different. And so we end up viewing each other as threats. There isn't that possibility to look at each other as friends or even allies. But that can change with you. Because to move from competition to collaboration, it really just requires you to create and start to believe in a new story where instead of, feeling triggered or jealous, you switch the story to one of inspiration. If she can do that and she can achieve something that you desire, then it's proof that you can too. And hey, maybe she could even help you along the way. Because under this new belief it means that there is enough to go around. And if you start stepping into that belief and you start living from that space, it means that from here we create a world where we lift each other up, where we can start to believe that we are stronger together, that we are here to help one another rise up. Where, if you're having a tough day or week or month with the kids, it means you can receive that support from that person around you, whether that means helping with the washing, or you get gifted that home cooked meal so you don't have to worry about dinner tonight. It means you have real support around you, not criticism. And it means that if you're the ex or a new girlfriend, then again, it creates the possibility of support, not rivalry, because it becomes a shared journey of us, not me versus you. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because that's how you build a supportive community around you, where you don't just help, but you want to help. You want to support each other instead of competing or comparing. You don't want to tear each other down, because needing to feel better than someone else in order to feel good about yourself, which is typically what we're doing when we're comparing ourselves to the ex or to the new girlfriend, that's not true power. True power is being yourself, being able to celebrate who you are and know your worth and feel good about that, while celebrating another person, celebrating their wins and who they are, because you know that it doesn't take away from you. And you know that if you want that kind of accomplishment, that it's possible for you, because you are capable, you are powerful enough inside of yourself that you can achieve that. And here's the best part, because I know sometimes it can feel hard to believe in yourself. It can feel hard to really trust that you have that capability. And so if you don't have that belief in yourself already, then through a community that celebrates you, that's how you can start to find that within yourself. By constantly being encouraged, it helps you tap into that ability, that power within yourself. Because in a space like this, no one takes away from you. They just show you the way and hold you in love as you find your way too. And the more women I work with, the more I realize just how important this is, because so many women don't have that quality of love and support around them, where they feel safe to be vulnerable, where they feel safe to be seen without judgment, without criticism. And we need this for deep healing. We need this to help us release that self-judgment and that critical voice in our heads, and that blame and that guilt and that self-doubt. That's why my new offering is about creating this for you, so that you can have a collective of high quality women around you to lift you up, to celebrate you, to cherish you. Because so many women are yearning for this. They have this void deep down that, they've tried to fill. They've gone on those shopping sprees and nothing seems to be enough. But what they're craving isn't just deep transformation or healing or connection to the self. They want connection through a community. So you can experience what it's like to not feel lonely, to not feel forgotten, to remember just how incredible and worthy you are, and be elevated through the collective. And so if that sounds like you, if you want more info in this, if you want to be a part of this collective, you can send me an email or a DM and ask about this collective experience. It's called Love and Luxury, or Amour et Luxe in French. Because when we stop competing and we start to support one another, then the labels and stories don't matter anymore. And going back to my example, if you don't think about it as the ex helping the new girlfriend, it's really just a story about one person helping another person. And is that really so strange? Just think of the doors a new story like that could open up for you in your world, however that would look. Because as I've explored in this episode, the initial reaction that most people have when they hear that I looked after my ex's new girlfriend's dog is based on a story that never really belonged to you. It's a story told to you by basically a multi-billion-dollar industry, because there is profit to be made when you compare yourself to everyone, and then you try to fit the mold, whether that means, getting lip fillers or Botox or becoming the girl boss. But what that does to your deeper belief system is make you question your worth. Instead of being happy in your own skin, it becomes a question of, well, how do I measure up? Am I as pretty, or am I as smart, or am I as successful as her? Can I juggle the kids and the home and still look nice? Or am I a bad mum? But a bad mum compared to who? Really? Compared to who? Because they are impossible standards. It completely ignores the fact that we are all unique and supposed to be different. So instead of competing and running ourselves into the ground, constantly judging each other, judging ourselves, and feeling inadequate or like we are not enough, we can stop competing and come together and start collaborating and supporting and lifting each other up. We can look at each other as sources of inspiration for what is possible, because there is room for everyone. You don't have to miss out. And as you start to see the opportunities around you, you have the ability to create a community around you of support, where you realize that true power, it doesn't come from tearing one another down. It comes from lifting each other up, because we are more powerful together. And we're also more whole when we're not alone. When you are part of a collective of people around you that only want to celebrate and support you, that lifts you up, that fills you up inside. Which, like I mentioned, is why I'm creating a new collective of women through my love and luxury experience, or Amour et Luxe. Because when we elevate the standard of life and self-love together, we all rise together. We are all more powerful together. We are more confident. We are more celebrated. We are just more joyful. So if you want more information on that, you can DM me or send me an email. My details are in the notes, and you can find out more about this collective experience. Because you don't ever have to feel alone. You get to choose the story you create for yourself, for your life, because when you open the door to possibilities, you can receive support from the most unlikely of places. And it starts with you. So you get to choose how you want to lead from love.